Is the Surefire X300 still king of the pistol-mounted lights? Watch our full-size light comparison and find out. Lights are information gathering devices, helping us navigate, search, identify, control, and communicate. Lumens are what companies and individuals focus on, but flood, hotspot, candela, and even light color can affect our ability to gather information we need. The updated Surefire X300U launched in August of 2018. This version provided 1000 lumens and solidified Surefire's large light as one of the best in the industry, a benchmark for others to compare against. Now it's almost 3 years later, and we want to know if the X300U, with a price tag of nearly double everything else in its category, still reigns as king of the pistol lights. We're going to test the Surefire against competitors from Streamlight, Olight, Inforce, and Nightstick to see if it's the brightest, longest lasting, furthest throwing, and best handling light in the market. Our first contender is the Streamlight TLR-1HL. This light has been a direct competitor to the Surefire, providing 1000 lumens and is commonly cited as one of the strongest competitors to the X300U. Next we have the Olight PL-PRO. Olight is a relative newcomer to the weapon light market, and the PL-PRO has 1500 lumens and magnetic charging capability. Inforce recently came out with an all-aluminum full-size light, the Wild 2, also with 1000 lumens and the highest candela rating in the group. Nightstick is the least well-known of all these manufacturers, but they have been working to compete in the weapon-mounted light arena with the TWM-850XL, providing 850 lumens. We tested all of these lights in practical scenarios, complemented with lab testing. We did not test these lights for battery drain issues, water tolerance, recoil vibration, heat output, or a myriad of other items. All of those vectors are important, and we do plan to cover them in the future. When searching and navigating in a low-light environment, we need to be able to do so quickly, efficiently, and quietly without tripping. While candela and hotspot are factors, flood plays an important role. We tested the lights in a garage space to see how well the flood of the light could illuminate the dark environment we move through. The Surefire X300U is our benchmark. It provides good definition of objects in the garage. The flood is wide and consistent enough to pick up details on the periphery. The Streamlight TLR-1HL is similar, with slightly less flood than the X300U. The Olight PL-PRO provides the widest flood and allows us to see all the way to the edges of the garage door opening. The Inforce flood is limited, as is the Nightstick TWM-850XL. All of these lights perform satisfactorily, and our benchmark, the X300U, is not the brightest, nor does it provide the widest usable flood area. If you're interested in more low-light defense videos, please like and subscribe down below. So how bright are the lights? Just like the manufacturer's tests, we put each light into an integrating sphere that captures total light output. However, unlike the recognized standards in the industry for flashlights, we start measuring from the time we turn the light on. The standards require that you capture after running the light for 30 seconds, and this explains why we may have some higher lumen ratings than the manufacturer's specifications. The highest lumen output we received was from the Olight at 1912 lumens, and then the Surefire at 1395 lumens, and then the Streamlight TLR-1HL at 1265 lumens. So how long will the light last? If I actually believe that there's a threat, I'm going to be slow and methodical. Clearing my house and shop thoroughly could take over 20 minutes. Each light's output begins to drop off from the moment it's activated, and I don't want to worry about my light dimming out as I get to the far reaches of my shop. For our runtime test, we use the same test equipment, load up new batteries, and time the light until it reaches 10% or less of its advertised lumen rating. When looking at the light output as time goes on, the lumen leader, which is the PL-PRO, maintains its lead for the first minute. After that minute, the X300U leads at 1320 lumens. But the X300U is also falling fast. After 1.5 minutes, the TLR-1HL leads with 1138 lumens. That TLR-1 stays in the lead between 1.5 and 5.5 minutes, where then it drops again below the X300U. For consistent, long-lasting, high output, the X300U leads, with the TLR-1HL a bit behind. 3 of these lights met or exceeded their manufacturer's specification for runtime: the X300U, the TLR-1HL, and the TWM-850XL. The Nightstick has the longest runtime, but remember, at 850 lumens, it also has the lowest output spec, making this test easier on it. The PL-PRO's specs say it's supposed to have 1.5 minutes at 1500 lumens, then 45 minutes at 600 lumens. However, this light drops to 345 lumens by 25 minutes and then turns off at 40 minutes. This is not what the spec would lead us to believe. As for total runtime, the X300U, our benchmark, is mid-pack, with the TLR-1HL beating it by almost 15 minutes. Now let's talk about identification and control of a threat. How well can we tell if an individual standing in our kitchen is an unexpected relative or a stranger, or if the item in their hand is a spatula or a knife? When we shine the light directly in someone's face, do they see a wall of light, or are they forced to turn away? So to really test these full-size lights, we put our test subject at 40 feet, holding a knife, and we used each light on that subject to determine what the light operator can see. The X300U has good light on the subject. It has a wide diffused hotspot. We can see the subject and the surroundings quite well. The TLR-1HL focuses on the subject quite a bit more, but still provides adequate flood. The PL-PRO has good light on the subject with a slightly wider hotspot than the Streamlight. The Wild 2 has the most intense hotspot, but this is at the cost of seeing the surrounding area. And finally, the TWM-850XL seemed similar to the Inforce, but had a slightly wider and less intense hotspot. At this distance, all of the lights seem to do their job, each with a slightly different hotspot and flood pattern. When we zoom in, we can see the difference that these lights make in their ability to see details. When looking at the hands and face, we can see details a little clearer with the TLR-1HL, the PL-PRO, and the Wild 2.
Right.
We believe that the lack of a strong defined hotspot inhibits the ability to see details with the X300U, especially at this distance. As you can see, each light also has a visibly different color. We test wavelength and color because warmer lights tend to show a little more contrast, allowing the eye to pick up green and red tones better. We also know that warmer lights tend to punch through environmental conditions better. These would be things like fog, smoke, rain, or snow, and they can also be items like an opposing or environmental light. The analogy here is that good fog lights tend to have a warmer tint. We have full spectrometer data available at lowlightdefense.com, links in the description, but here we're going to focus on temperature measurements in Kelvin, with a preference for lights just on the warmer side of 5500 Kelvin. The X300U is the best of the bunch, coming in just under 5000 Kelvin, and you can see that it's a little bit of a warm light. The Streamlight TLR-1HL is very close to our target, but is a little bit over, and we do prefer a warmer light. The warmest light of the bunch was the PL-PRO, standing out at under 4500 Kelvin, but this starts to put everything in a little bit of an orange cast. The Inforce and the Nightstick were towards the cool end of the spectrum, and we do know that it is easier for LED manufacturers to produce lights that are a little bit higher output, but they shift that color spectrum towards the cool end. Now, these tests all focused on what our operators saw, but what does our subject see? How effective do these lights control? Come out of there. Show me your hands. In the shower. Come out. Show me your hands. Hands. Other hand. Come on out. We had our test subject classify each light on a scale in one of three categories. Spotlight is when the subject can see the light source and determine its exact location, but cannot make out any part of the light operator. Both the PL-PRO and the TWM-850XL fell into this category. Wall of light is when the subject only knows the operator's general direction, but doesn't know what the operator's hands are doing. The X300U was a wall of light. Our highest class is painful light. This is when the subject sees a wall of light, but also is compelled to cover his eyes or turn away due to the pain caused by the light. Both the TLR-1HL and the Wild 2 excelled here. Now, these tests are subjective, but we did find a correlation to our candela lab testing. Candela is the intensity of the light in a particular direction. If you want maximum throw or maximum brightness in your opponent's eyes, candela is key. This chart shows how well the lights do at their maximum brightness center. This is the center of the light. It shows how close our readings are to the manufacturer's spec sheets and how each of these lights compares to each other. The first thing to note is that our equipment measured between 20% and 44% less than the manufacturer's spec sheets. Our equipment is new and calibrated, but it appears that something is different between our ratings and all of the manufacturers. Regardless, each of these numbers are comparable to each other, allowing you to get a relative feel for where each of these lights stand. Given what we saw in the practical tests, we were not surprised that the Wild 2 performed the best here. Inforce chose to make a very bright hotspot, and it appears to be at the expense of flood. The X300U, which is our benchmark, was the worst of all 5 lights tested. This seems to confirm what we saw in the practical tests. If you want data on angular candela, showing you how bright and large each hotspot is and how bright and large the flood is, check out lowlightdefense.com. We don't think that light output is the only consideration. We think that physical factors should also be part of the equation. Switches are our interface to control when the light comes on and when it turns off. Most lights, these 5 included, have 2 main modes of switching, which are momentary and constant. Momentary mode is one where the switch is pressed, the light turns on, and then when you let your finger off the switch, the light turns off. This mode is typically used to rapidly gain required information, but not so long as to give away the operator's exact position. These types of switches are often a predefined motion, such as on the X300U, the TLR-1HL, and the TWM-850XL, or have a predefined length of time your finger must remain on the switch for it to turn off when you let off, and that would be like the PL-PRO and the Wild 2. Constant mode is where the light is toggled on and then requires another motion or switch activation to turn the light off. The constant mode is often used when the operator is not as concerned about allowing others to pinpoint his or her position. The X300U has ambidextrous paddles mounted on both sides of the rear of the light. Momentary is typically a press forward with the reaction hand thumb and can easily be modulated for as long or short a time as required. Constant is a press up or down with the thumb. Momentary activation for the light is excellent. The constant activation of the switches is a bit stiff, making the constant mode on and off a bit more difficult than it should be. The X300U switches are good, but we find them to be mid-pack in terms of performance. The TLR-1HL has paddles mounted on both sides of the rear, also allowing ambidextrous use. Momentary activation is excellent on the TLR-1HL, able to be switched on by a counterclockwise motion for as short a time as desired. Our test team was able to use momentary while firing the pistol without flickering as a result of the finger coming off the switch. This is the only light that allowed all team members to perform that momentary activation while shooting without the flickering. Constant activation can also be made by turning clockwise. The Streamlight switches are smooth, definitely the smoothest of the rotation style switches in this test set. The TWM-850XL feels like the TLR-1HL, not quite as smooth, but it maintains a constant direction between the left and the right side for activation. Down is momentary, up is constant. The PL-PRO, on the other hand, has ambidextrous rear side switches that press inward. If you press and hold down for at least half a second, then they operate as momentary mode. If you activate with less than the gate time, then they will act in constant mode. The style of switch is fairly easy to activate in constant mode, but may not be suitable for folks that prefer a quick momentary burst of light. Note that Olight provides both a strobe and a lockout mode in the PL-PRO. The PL-PRO switches feel of high quality and activation is not an issue. The Wild 2 also uses a rear press-in style switch. The switches on the Wild 2 feel like they're high quality. We did find that this switch was harder to activate because we're typically trying to drive our reaction side thumb forward, and the Wild 2 likes to have that force going in all the way to the side. The momentary gate feels very similar between the Inforce and the Olight, requiring perhaps about a half a second press to activate the momentary mode. So if you're looking for momentary mode of less than that amount of time, these lights cannot provide it. Our testers rank these switches in terms of preference, with the TLR-1HL coming in first, followed by the Nightstick TWM-850XL. The X300U switches were not ranked the best. Batteries are very similar in all these lights with the exception of the Olight PL-PRO. The Surefire, Streamlight, and the Inforce allow toolless battery changes of the two CR123A batteries. We prefer this style because it allows for easy changing in the field. The Nightstick requires a Phillips or slotted screwdriver to change its two CR123As. The Olight uses their signature magnetic charging pendants, and this allows you to charge your battery while the light is on the pistol, and some companies build holsters that allow charging while holstered as well. Battery charging is done by way of USB power, and our testing shows that the battery is charged anywhere between 1 and 2 hours. Our favorite battery system allows for field changing, so we can be up and running with fresh batteries anytime. The X300U, the TLR-1HL, and the Wild 2 meet these requirements. So, is the king dethroned? We think so. The Surefire X300U is still a great light. It provides a good quality light. It provides it for a long amount of time. It is field proven. However, it does cost double of any of the other lights in this market. I've been running the Glock 34 with the X300U the last 3 to 6 months. Since I have all these lights, cost is not an issue, but I'm actually going to change out to the TLR-1HL. I like the light that it puts out. I like the fact that it gives me more candela, and to be honest, I really like the switches. So I'm going to be running the Streamlight. Now, we've run through all the data, you know what I'm going to do, so now it's up to you to decide what's best for you.
Oh, dang it. I thought the glass was distorted enough. Good job. So, I thought this would be a great one because you got all kinds of glass and mirrors.
Yeah, I could see through there well enough.
That's good.
I assume you've done it with people in there, right?
Actually, I usually hide on the toilet. That's my go-to. Feet up.
That was what I was waiting for.